A professional basketball player drove her closed fist into the throat of the most famous athlete in her sport, and the referee standing 10 feet away called absolutely nothing. No whistle. No flagrant. No ejection. Play on. The biggest star women's basketball has ever produced got hit in the windpipe on national television, and the people paid to protect her looked right through it. And when the league finally did do something about it, a full day later, after the entire internet had already seen the clip, the punishment they handed down was so small it almost made the whole thing worse. I'm going to walk you through every piece of this, and by the end I'm going to show you the one detail about the poster everybody's screaming about that completely flips the story nobody is telling you. Stick around for that, because it's the part the Rage channels got dead wrong. Let's set the scene. June 24th, 2026. Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. The Indiana Fever are hosting the Phoenix Mercury, and this is not a friendly reunion. These two teams had already played 2 nights earlier, and that game was a powder keg. 6 technical fouls. An ejection. Caitlin Clark and former Fever player Dewana Bonner getting tangled up near the basket and exchanging words after the whistle. The Fever won that first 186-77. So both teams walk into Wednesday night already angry, already chippy, already looking for a reason. And they found plenty. With 6 minutes and 52 seconds left in the second quarter, Caitlin Clark went down to the floor going after a loose ball. Alyssa Thomas, the Mercury forward, one of the most physically dominant players in the entire league, came over the top. And as she got up, her fist made contact with Clark's throat. Not her shoulder. Not her arm. Her throat. The clip is right there for anyone to watch. Clark on the ground, Thomas's closed fist driving into her neck, and then Thomas stepping over her and jogging back up the floor like nothing happened. And here's the thing that made fans absolutely lose their minds. There was an official standing right there on the baseline. Right there. And no foul was called. Not a common foul, not a flagrant nothing. The play just continued. The ball rolled away, Phoenix went the other direction, and the most marketable athlete in women's sports was left on the hardwood holding her neck. Now, the WNBA has a rule on the books. The league office can review any game after the fact. They can take a foul that was never called and reclassify it as a flagrant. They can fine. They can suspend. And the day after this game, that's exactly what they did. The league announced that Alyssa Thomas had committed what they called a, quote, non-basketball act by, quote, recklessly making contact with her fist to the throat area of Caitlin Clark. They hit her with a flagrant foul too. They gave her a 1-game suspension, to be served that Saturday against the Toronto Tempo. And because a flagrant 2 carries an automatic financial penalty, they fined her $1,000. $1,000. Let that number sit for a second. For driving a fist into another player's throat. $1,000. These are professional athletes. That fine is a rounding error. You could do that every single night and barely feel it in your bank account. And I want to be fair here, because this channel does not do one-sided outrage. A 1-game suspension for a star player is not nothing. Sitting Alyssa Thomas, a 6-time All-Star, for a game is a real penalty in terms of basketball impact. But the fine is the part that turned this from a serious league response into a punchline. When the consequence for a throat shot is the kind of money these players spend on dinner, you've told everyone watching exactly how seriously you take it. And here's the detail that really exposes the problem, and this is the part one want you to remember when we get to the poster. The only reason Thomas got punished at all is that the clip went viral. Think about that. The officials in the building saw nothing, or at least called nothing. Fever head coach Stephanie White said she actually brought the play to the officials' attention at halftime, and she was told they didn't see it. Didn't see it. So the system that's supposed to protect players in real time completely failed. And it only got corrected because millions of people online refused to let the clip die. The league didn't catch this. The league got embarrassed into catching it. Those are two very different things, and every player in the league understands the difference. Stephanie White did not hold back afterward, and I'll quote her directly because her words matter here. She said, "We have a generational talent and a WNBA superstar who had 2 cheap shots right there that weren't called. Absolutely unacceptable." And she went further, calling the fist to the throat crazy and dangerous. Now notice she said 2 cheap shots, not 1. Because the throat shot wasn't the only thing that happened to Clark that night. Later in that same second quarter, Clark went up for a 3-pointer and came down awkwardly after contact on the closeout. She hit the floor and immediately grabbed at her back. The officials reviewed that play too, and they declined to upgrade it to a flagrant. Clark stayed in for a bit, but the back issue was clearly bothering her, and she exited in the third quarter and did not return. She finished that night with 19 points and 8 assists in just 20 minutes of play, shooting it efficiently before she had to come out. The Fever went on to lose 111-109, a 2-point heartbreaker, with Kelsey Mitchell pouring in 30 and Sophie Cunningham hitting a clutch bucket in the final seconds to make it a one-possession game. Now here's where I have to do the thing that separates this channel from the Rage Farms, and stay with me because it actually makes the story stronger, not weaker. A lot of people online tied that back injury directly and exclusively to that rough night, like the Mercury physically broke Caitlin Clark in that one game. And the honest, verified truth is more complicated than that. Caitlin Clark has a documented history of back problems. She missed a game against the Portland Fire back in May of this season because of her back. And last season, she was limited to just 13 games dealing with lower body issues. So did a brutal, physical night against Phoenix aggravate an existing back problem? Almost certainly. Did one closeout create a brand new injury out of nowhere? That's not what the record shows. I'm telling you that because if I feed you a cleaner, angrier version of the story, I'm no better than the channels making stuff up. The truth is bad enough on its own. The Fever ruled her out of their next game against the Los Angeles Sparks, and the team did not give a return timetable. So that's the on-court disaster. A throat shot with no call. A second cheap shot with no call. A star player walking off hurt. A $1,000 fine. And a head coach openly torching the officiating. And honestly, that alone would be a story. But it's not even the part that set the internet on fire this week. Because at almost the exact same time all of this was happening, the WNBA dropped something else. And it became the single loudest WNBA conversation of the entire week. Remember that open loop I mentioned at the start? Here's where we start walking toward it. The league is in the middle of celebrating its 30th anniversary. 30 years of the WNBA. And as part of that celebration, they released a commemorative poster. 30 players spanning the entire history of the league. Every franchise represented, even the ones that don't exist anymore, like the Cleveland Rockers and the Miami Soul. A nice keepsake. $29.99 in the league's online shop. Sounds completely harmless. And within minutes of it going up online, it went absolutely nuclear. Because eagle-eyed fans noticed someone was missing. Caitlin Clark is not on the poster. The single most recognizable basketball player on the planet right now. The woman who, since arriving as the #1 pick in 2024, has dragged this entire league's TV ratings, attendance, and merchandise sales up with her. The player they literally call the Michael Jordan of the WNBA. The biggest draw the sport has ever had. Not on the 30-year celebration poster. And you know who is on it? Her own teammate Sophie Cunningham, Angel Reese, Paige Buchers, Kelsey Plum, Aya Wilson. Legends like Lisa Leslie and Dawn Staley, who absolutely earned their spots. But the biggest name in the building? Left off. And it didn't stop with Clark. Because once people started really looking, they noticed the snub list was wild. No Diana Taurasi. Diana Taurasi, who played 20 of the league's 30 seasons, arguably the greatest scorer in the history of the sport. Not on it. No Sue Bird. No Candace Parker. No Elena Del Don. No Cynthia Cooper, who was the dominant force in the league's earliest years. So now fans are looking at this thing going, wait, this isn't just disrespecting Clark. This poster is missing half the Mount Rushmore of the entire sport. And the part that made it absolutely irresistible as a story, the teammate they put on the poster instead of Clark, Sophie Cunningham, went on her own podcast and basically begged to be taken off. Her show is called Show Me Something, and when the poster came up, her reaction wasn't pride. Her actual words were, "Why would you ever put me on it?" She called the whole thing a joke. She said this is exactly why the league is getting lit up on social media, because they left off a generational talent, the best player to ever come through the league in her words, and replaced her with players like, well, herself. She said if they were smart, they'd market the life out of their stars, and they don't. She said that should be Caitlin Clark, that should be Kelsey Mitchell, that should be Aaliyah Boston. Why are they putting random players on there? And I'm one of them. Think about how rare that is. A player who made the poster using her own spot on it to tell the league the poster is broken. That's like winning an award and using your speech to say the judges have no idea what they're doing. And Sophie didn't stop at the poster. She tore into the officiating too. She said this kind of rough stuff happens to Clark every single game, and the refs and the league do absolutely nothing about it. She admitted something pretty stunning, that she and her teammates didn't even see the throat shot happen in real time, because if they had, the bench would have emptied to defend her. She said the contact comes so often and so fast that the team can't even catch all of it as it happens. That's not one bad night. That's a pattern so routine, it blends into the background. So you stack all of this up. The throat shot, the no call, the $1,000 fine, the injury, the missing legends, the teammate publicly asking to be removed from the poster. And the narrative writes itself, right? The league hates its own star. The league is jealous of Caitlin Clark. The league is deliberately erasing her. That is the story that 3, 4, 5 other channels have already sold to millions of viewers this week. The deliberate snub. The conspiracy. The tell. And here's where I have to stop you. Because this is the part nobody is telling you, and it's the whole reason you're still watching. The poster snub was not the league deliberately erasing Caitlin Clark. And we actually know why she's not on it. The poster wasn't even made by the WNBA's own design team in a vacuum. It was produced by a company called Wincraft, a licensee that makes this kind of merchandise. And according to reporting from Darren Rovell, who covers the business of sports, the reason Caitlin Clark isn't on that poster comes down to Caitlin Clark's own licensing terms. Here's the deal. Outside of her arrangement with Nike, Clark only allows licensees like Wincraft to use her name and her number, not her likeness, not her image. So when Wincraft sat down to make a poster built entirely on player images, they physically could not put Caitlin Clark's face on it. Not because the league refused, because the rights to her image weren't available to them. Now I want to be precise here, because precision is the entire point of this channel. This is reporting from one journalist, Darren Rovell, not an official statement from the WNBA or from Wincraft. So I'm attributing it, not declaring it gospel. But it is a specific sourced logical explanation that has now been picked up by multiple outlets, and it fits every fact we have. It explains why a poster celebrating the league's biggest era left off the face of that era. Not malice. A licensing restriction that Clark's own camp put in place, probably to protect the value of her image for her own deals. Which, by the way, is smart business on her end. And here's why this matters so much for how you think about this whole week. The Rage channels took the snub and built an entire conspiracy on top of it. The league is jealous. The commissioner resents her. It was a message from the top. One channel literally said it wasn't an oversight, it was a tell. And that entire tower of outrage was built on a foundation that, when you actually check it, has an innocent, sourced explanation sitting right underneath it. That's the difference between receipts and rage. Rage sells you the conspiracy. Receipts make you go check first. But, and this is important, I'm not going to let the league completely off the hook either, because that would be just as dishonest. Here's what the licensing explanation does not cover. It explains Caitlin Clark. It does not explain Diana Taurasi. It does not explain Sue Bird or Candace Parker or Elena Del Don. Those are 4 of the greatest players in the history of the sport, and there's no image rights reason floating around for any of them. So the broader criticism, that this 30-year poster did a genuinely strange job of representing the actual history of the league, that one still completely stands. The poster is still a head-scratcher. It's just a head-scratcher for reasons that have nothing to do with the Caitlin Clark conspiracy. So let's put the real picture together, the honest one. The on-court stuff is genuinely damning. A fist to the throat with an official standing right there and no whistle. A second cheap shot with no call. A $1,000 fine that's a joke for what it was. A star walking off hurt, on a back that's been a problem all season. A head coach saying out loud that it's unacceptable. That part is real, it's verified, and the league should be embarrassed by the officiating, full stop. The off-court poster story, the part everyone turned into a jealousy conspiracy? That one falls apart the second you check who actually made the poster and what Clark's own licensing terms are. And that, right there, is the whole lesson of this week. The most outrageous version of a story and the true version of a story are usually not the same thing. The throat shot didn't need to be exaggerated. It was bad enough on its own. The poster didn't need a conspiracy. The real explanation was sitting there the whole time. One of those stories the league earned. The other one the internet invented. And telling them apart is the entire job. Here's the question I'll leave you with, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments. Now that you know the licensing explanation behind the poster, does it change how you see this week at all? Or does the throat shot and that $1,000 fine still tell you everything you need to know about how this league treats its biggest star? Drop your take below, because I read them and I'll be pulling the best ones into the next video. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is built for, the kind who wants the real story instead of the loudest one. So do me one favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because the second Caitlin Clark speaks on any of this, or the moment the league is forced to respond, we're breaking it down here first, with the receipts, not the rage. Play on.